The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
Hello and welcome to Squawk Box. We are live from Davos and London. I'm Karen Cho with Steve Sedgwick, and these are your headlines. Clash of the tech titans. Elon Musk slams President Trump's Stargate project, saying Softbank, Oracle and OpenAI don't have the money. But Sam Altman criticizes his self-interest. The most talked about man at Davos prepares to address the forum via video link, as President Trump's trade war rhetoric casts a shadow over conversations here in the Swiss Alps.
Well, President Trump warning Russia of further economic sanctions if there's no end to the war in Ukraine, whilst the top advisor to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, Andriy Yermak, told me that there are certain concessions that Kyiv won't make.
President Zelenskyy is a president who is never going for any compromise, the independence, territorial integrity, sovereignty of Ukraine.
And Poland's president ramps up his call for NATO allies to dramatically increase defense spending, warning Putin will not stop with Ukraine.
Therefore, today it's paramount that we actually return back to Cold War era defense expenditure policies, whether we like it or not. It's intrinsically the same thing, Soviet imperialism and Putin's version.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum in London. Global markets scaling fresh peaks with the S&P 500 and the Stock 600 both hitting new records.
I think it's been a fairly productive Davos for a lot of people, and one of the big themes is always going to be intelligent AI, intelligent systems of the future, and we've been talking about through the lens of Stargate, and it's our top story today. What type of infrastructure build out are we going to see in the United States, and what does that mean for the competitive edge of the USA, the likes of Europe and everywhere else around the globe?
Why are you beating about... Morning, by the way, you look glamorous as ever. It's like having a Wookiee next to Princess Leia, isn't it? The way I'm dressed every day. Lovely to see you. And we've both been actually barely meeting apart from on set because we've been off at different things. I have no idea why that's our top headline. And let me just go in just a second, because you've kind of said, it's about AI. Quite frankly, the only reason we put that as a top headline, and I say this because it's the debate that people are having, is because you've got two very rich men vying for the ear of the president who are just moaning about each other on Twitter. One of them saying, we've got the AI Stargate contract. The other one's going, you haven't got the money. And the other one's going, we have got the money. And it's just kind of like children. How can two people who are so extraordinarily powerful, who are so extraordinarily intelligent and extraordinarily rich be such children?
Well, we are talking about a new power structure being formed in the United States.
We're talking about a power struggle.
Well, struggle, but I think we're also talking about a new power structure. And in recent weeks, it was Elon Musk really at the top of that power grid, or the pyramid, or however you want to look at it. Yeah. And I think recently this announcement that we've seen now suggests that there are other players, and maybe not everyone's going to get on. Sam Altman is there, and he's got fantastic technology. We're talking about Satya Nadella. What about that Microsoft relationship with OpenAI that's been very big in business circles? Is that starting to fracture as well? Who else has got a seat at the table? And this week, it's been Larry Ellison. Where did he come from? His market share of Oracle, nowhere near the cloud computing share that Amazon has. And we know Jeff Bezos turned up at inauguration. His star is not shining that brightly. It seems like Larry Ellison is on the move. Will he have some sort of play when it comes to TikTok? So I think we're talking about moving power structures, and that's key. But the other point here is that I've had a ton of conversations around digital inclusion, digital infrastructure.
I'm glad you had to have those conversations, because I didn't want those ones.
It touches every side. Future economy build out in every area. And if you don't have the architecture, you don't have the infrastructure, how do you build a future economy? And what we're hearing here is $500 billion. There may be question marks as to where the money's coming from. But if the money is forthcoming from every corner of the globe, and let's face it, a Softbank does go to every corner of the globe to scrape capital, then does it come at the expense of other countries?
Right. And sometimes they even make money out of it, but not all the time. Do you want to tell me about two rich men having a squabble?
Yes, I do. In case you missed it, Tesla CEO and ex-owner Elon Musk has criticised the Stargate AI project launched by President Trump alongside the CEOs of OpenAI, Oracle and Softbank. In a post on X, Musk said, quote, they don't actually have the money, going on to claim that Softbank had secured less than $10 billion in funding. OpenAI's Sam Altman responded, saying Musk's claims were wrong and calling on the Trump ally to put America first in his new role. Andrew Ross-Sorkin caught up with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella here in Davos and asked him about the spat.
Microsoft is investing $80 billion in capital each year, and this year we're investing. And I'm not particularly in the details of what they're investing. Look, all I know is I'm good for my $80 billion. I am going to spend $80 billion building out Azure. Customers can count on Microsoft with OpenAI models being there everywhere in the world, serving OpenAI models and other models. That's, I think, what I know.
Of course, a lot of European politicians have been in the sights of Elon Musk, haven't they? And none more so than the Spanish Prime Minister. Pedro Sanchez says where the close relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump was cause for concern.
It's weird, this combination, but I would say that we have a European response to that. We have a European way on how do we conceive and use these new technologies. And I think, on the contrary to what we are seeing in the US, we need to regulate. We need good regulation, of course. We need a comprehensive regulation, but we need to regulate because at the end of the day, the social media, this new technology, we have to put it in the hands and the interest of the people, not techno-oligarchs. That
the community notes rather than proper independent moderation. It just doesn't wash for you.
Well, fact checks, how do we fight against misinformation in social media and so on and so forth. So these are the debates nowadays, and I think that from the public sector, from the Commission, which is the European government, we need also to react and to guarantee democracy.
President Trump is set to deliver a hotly anticipated virtual speech to delegates here in Davos later today. That is coming up at 4 p.m. London time. President Trump has repeated calls for tariffs against European Union countries, saying the measures are needed for fairness. We've been speaking to policymakers here in Davos about how countries across the world should respond to the threat of trade curbs.
Every country is going to be at the negotiating table, trying to get the best deal that they can for their countries, and we'll see where that lands. But this is very far from, being in the very typical rules-based international trade environment.
Blanket tariffs are not necessarily giving you the results that you expect. And I'm not sure exactly what result is expected, whether it's a transactional tool, whether it's going to be a pure trade tool. But I'm not really surprised. But it doesn't mean to say that it will not happen. I think that it will be a more selective, focused development that we will see in the next few days or weeks.
I'm not the tariff kind of a guy. I come from a small country. I believe in open and free trade. But of course, Trump does have a case to be made. There is a trade deficit in the US part, and something needs to be done and addressed. I think tariffs are the wrong way to go about it. I think actually the US and the EU should forge forces together and create growth, wealth and greatness together.
Coming up in Davos this morning, we'll be speaking to the CEOs of Carlsberg, SAP and the German Finance Minister Jörg Kukies. We'll also bring you conversations with the CEOs of Rio Tinto, Siemens and Sanofi, along with BBVA Chair Carlos Torres Vila. That is coming up on CNBC. I'm pleased to say very early around the set with us is Henrik Andersen, the CEO of Vestas. Thank you so much for joining us. So much to talk to you about. I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's the European pessimism versus the US growth and the exceptionalism story we're going to be seeing, some of the concerns around the tariffs that could be still forthcoming and big changes in your industry. Just tell us about what is the peak conversation for you this week.
No, as always, a Davos week for us, or for me, is fully packed. It's a combination of good public discussions around where are we in the world, what needs to happen. We are now 33,000 colleagues around the world, and for me, most of the week here on the public side is how do we secure that they have decent access and good access to policymakers in the countries. And then, of course, secondly here, it's fantastic because it's 4 days in pretty tight schedule from, as you can see, early morning to very late evening, because here is the part where I can avoid travel 2 or 3 months in the first half of the year because I can see everyone here.
Let me talk about access, because that actually comes to a number of points on public policy, whether we're looking at trade tariffs in Europe and whether the regulatory environment for green energy in the United States has now turned sour. What do you think?
Yeah, I think to both, I will say let sense prevail. I think we all educated and we all seen it. If we suddenly see that the tariffs will bring the world to a better place, I think that's at least a new theory to many of us. I think for all of us, immediately you either have taxes or tariffs on the goods we are buying ourselves. That creates inflation. I don't think the world needs excessive inflation. Whether you then call that as a consequence of a trade war, but let's see that. I mean, as I said, it sits in the few hands of very few people if that escalate. And I think my point will always be conflicts can happen, but you also need to be sure there's somebody to de-escalate.
Henrik, we've got a previous template of this, albeit a more uncoordinated template from Trump 45 as opposed to Trump 47, Trump Mark II now. Whilst he obviously was not in favour of renewable initiatives on the last presidency, the states moved ahead. Companies moved ahead. A lot of the US moved ahead. We know that as well. Is that going to happen this time round, or is the lead from the federal government, from the administration, just overwhelmingly negative, and that's going to affect the whole of the proposition for you and others in the States?
And the answer there is, don't think so. Because if you look at it, we take Vestas as an example. We got 45 gigawatts installed in the US already. That's a third of the installment of wind in the US. That's equal to somewhere around 36-37 million households. So whatever you see there, that's a part of what was the, I call it affordable, very good electricity supply and green supply in the US. And you can read it differently. And of course, most of you have read it negatively and saying he declares an energy emergency, and you see it as a negative. I see it as well in this energy transition. We need a lot more of everything.
That's not true. What we're doing is we're responding to a man who says we're not going to build any more windmills and we're going to drill, baby, drill. Can I respond to that? Because I've just...
but as I said here, and the first executive order is that he is putting a stop on some of the leases on federal land, which of course he can do. And on the other hand, you also know that the private land that sits on the states and other stuff is very much in the process.
Which is the point we're making.
Exactly.
Now, the other side of the coin, which actually I think you're even more animated about, in fact, definitely, is what are we doing over here? and we've had the same conversation with you and everyone else for probably about 4 years now. Yeah. Rip up the regulation. Let's have smart regulation, not no regulation, smart regulation. Yes. They're all talking a great book. We've spoken to all kinds of commissioners out here as well. Are they actually going to do rather than talk this time?
Well, you followed us. We announced something in Ukraine yesterday. Biggest investment since the war broke out in February 22. And I think you're right. There's when you get that many people that are used to have access to that many medias together, then there is a lot of talk. And to some extent, you could wish for a bit more actions on it. But I think, depending on what you fly into Davos with and what you come out of Davos with, we are here to do some of those. I think you further, in the previous years, said, are you here to do deals? Yes, we are, because that's actually what we are about. And when you're able to build a small million households, new capacity of energy in Ukraine, in a, I call it war times, but also preparing for recovery times, that sets a statement.
Can I ask you about the macro backdrop that you're operating in? Because one of your big rivals has had some impairments, and what was cited this week was the financing costs in the United States. I mean, we've all been watching interest rates starting to retreat, even though there's been a few moments for the bond market. But what does that macro backdrop look like for you? Are financing costs still too high for green transition?
I think this is a price point discussion for renewable energy. If you sit here and wish that it becomes for free, then, as I said yesterday, I hold my ears and I watched my eyes and closed them and said, never. I mean, energy should not become free because at that point in time we don't appreciate the value it actually adds to us as society and all of that. So in the energy transition, there will be some of those bumps. The world has never done a transition of this magnitude without hitting a couple of bumps on the road, and that's what you are experiencing. Then I think it's very company specific, super company specific, and as I learned one thing very early in life and business: don't comment on anyone else's P&L.
So green momentum is intact, is what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. And you got a temperature check on 2024. Unfortunately, we are past the 1.5 degrees, with everyone promised that we wouldn't do. So now we're at 1.6. Do you know what? The energy transition continues. It continues at pace if you look across the globe. And then somebody will maybe take a bit slower pace for a period of time. But take Europe, it's actually happening. And you've spoken to the German, both Chancellor, and you're speaking to your cookies later on today. Great country that sets an example for the rest of Europe. Now there's probably a couple of countries missing to follow it.
Henrik, we've got to let you go. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good to see you.
Anderson with us, the CEO of Vestas. Let's take a look at the markets. Juliana, good morning to you.
Karen, Steve, good morning. Well, here in London, we are keeping a close eye on the market action. Yesterday was a positive day stateside. You had all three of the majors advance higher, led by the tech-heavy NASDAQ. A lot of AI optimism on the back of that Stargate announcement, and of course, the broad-based optimism around President Trump and the agenda that he plans to bring into action. The S&P 500 actually hit a new record high intraday yesterday. In the Asian session overnight, a little bit more of a mixed picture. You can see here the Hang Seng is trading slightly lower. The Kospi over in South Korea also taking a dip, down about 1.1%. Nikkei 225 and the Shanghai Composite, though, are trading in the green. We are going to take a quick break, but coming up on this show, we will be speaking to Schneider Electric CEO Olivier Blum. Stay tuned for that. First on CNBC Interview next.
So the US President Donald Trump has threatened Russia and other participating countries with further tariffs if there is no deal to end the war in Ukraine. It comes a day after the president promised more sanctions against Moscow if it failed to negotiate. Now, Andriy Yermak, those who know, he is arguably the second most important person in Ukraine. He's the head of the office of the president of Ukraine. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's an incredibly interesting person. Well, he told me yesterday that countries must unite in not buying Russian gas.
We think that the real, very important, that Europe will be work together with the United States for continuous support of Ukraine. It will be very bad if some of these elements will be absent. It's mean that without the United States, who is the biggest supporter of Ukraine during this full-scale invasion, we will be in another situations. But also, without Europe, it's mean that the speech I saw in some title of the after the speech of President Zelenskyy yesterday, some journalists said that Europe wake up. And this was very much, very concrete, very frank, but very honest messages of the President of Ukraine to the European leaders. How it's necessary to be strong, how it's necessary to be united, how it's necessary to be honest. And he said, for example, about energy, it's mean that sometimes it's necessary to think about the principles. And if today we are, all of us, we want to be together, it's impossible to now to say we are together and tomorrow think about how to get, for example, gas from Russia and to give the principles. We are very much respect all the country who is respect us. It's mean that for us it's a very important how leading the people in this country. We are very grateful, Ukrainians very grateful. But we want to give the military machine who is every hour killing Ukrainians to give any dollars. If in this moment it's possible to receive this gas from United States, your LNG, it's necessary doing.
Well, I had a couple of very long and passionate conversations with not only the Ukrainians, but also the Poles yesterday as well. The President, Andrzej Duda, has told me, CNBC, that NATO members must be prepared to raise their threshold on defence spending to above 2%. 2% is the minimum it's got to be now. And a lot of countries, Spain, Italy, powerful countries, nowhere near. Anyway, they've got to get above 2% if they want to stop Russian advances into Ukraine and potentially beyond. I sat down with President Duda here in Davos, and I asked him how he sees Trump's criticism of Europe's military spending.
The security situation in Europe, and especially in Poland's orbit, has drastically changed due to the return of de facto Russian imperialism. Russia attacked Ukraine and today occupies a vast part of its territory. Russia remains the aggressor, and the war there continues. For those of us who have historical experience of Russian imperialism, it's clear that it won't be halted in Ukraine if Russia prevails. It will keep going. It may continue to attack Ukraine, or it could hit other countries. Therefore, today it's paramount that we actually return back to Cold War-era defence expenditure policies, whether we like it or not. It's intrinsically the same thing, Soviet imperialism and Putin's version. It's about expansionism, gaining territory, dominating other countries, and enlarging the Russian sphere of influence. So today, if we want to defend against this, and us Poles decisively do, we'll be spending close to 5% of GDP on defence this year. We're aware that we have to modernise our armed forces. We have to be strong and provide a real deterrent to keep Russian aggression at bay. We believe our NATO allies should follow suit in solidarity. Back in March 2024, I proposed to the then US President Joe Biden to raise the threshold for NATO defence spending to 3% of GDP.
But, sir, if getting to 2% didn't stop Russian aggression and Putin's adventurism, why will 3% make a difference? Why will 4% make a difference? Or, as the US President has talked about, 5% even?
To nie procenty odstraszą Rosję.
Percentages themselves won't scare off Russia, but it's how we use them. If we do indeed use the money, which constitutes these percentages, to build up our military resistance, we'll be able to repel any attack. That's what it's about. NATO is a defence alliance. It doesn't attack others. NATO wants to be prepared for any attack, at any time and anywhere, to protect any country that's being attacked.
Well, many agree the dust needs to settle before we can understand what 4 more years of President Trump in the White House will mean for America's relationship with Europe. The majority of guests, though, that we've been speaking to here seem to agree on one thing. Europe has to remove barriers if it wants to keep up with the United States.
We need to keep on building and deepening the single market. It doesn't make sense to empower a national champion against another national champion on going through a kind of subsidy race among different member states. But how we can build on these complementarities, how we can facilitate horizontal mergers that ensure that things that can be complementary but build bigger European capacities are in place.
We really need a change of mindset. The mindset here today is, first, what is the regulation? Let's rethink regulation for the next 1 year. Are we compliant or not? The mindset should be, are we ready to create the future? Because Europe, over the last 500 years, led the future. Europe is not prepared to lead the future anymore.
Let's make sure that we remove the barriers over which we have control. So I hope this is what happens in the next few weeks, and it's one way to respond to the change in the trade policy in the United States that we should anticipate. It's be strong at home and make sure you transact, that you sell and purchase at home, that you save at home, and that you invest at home.
Right, so let's get something straight. This Trump stream of consciousness against green energy investments, against green infrastructure. We've already seen that, a lot of $500 billion worth of green infrastructure loans at risk already as well. There's a stream of consciousness against. It doesn't have to be profit or green. It can be both as well. I want to show everyone a share price. I'm going to put up on the screen now a 5-year chart of Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric in March 2020 was trading at €72. It is now trading, as of the last print, at €269.8. That is a stunning 5-year, 186% increase. It's also the company that has just been named yet again the greenest company on the planet.
Is it a green story or is it a digital story, though, when you look at that share price?
Well, let's ask. Olivier Blum is the CEO of Schneider Electric and joins us now. Olivier, lovely to see you. It's the first time we've actually chatted to you on camera, so thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
Look, I kind of set the ball on the tee for you as well. It doesn't have to be green or profits. I think that share price that I just showed shows, yeah, you can have both.
Absolutely, and it's good for me to be with you today because indeed yesterday we've been rewarded as the most sustainable company in the world by Corporate Knights, the second time in 5 years. It's interesting. I've been in this company for 32 years and actually I was part of the team 21 years ago when we started that engagement. And today we are mixing a lot of things. We are mixing green, we are mixing ESG, but at the end of the day for us, it was what does it take to be a sustainable company? What does it mean? You cannot develop yourself as a French company by origin 25 years, 30 years ago, everywhere in the world by not trying to impact positively your environment. And your environment, of course, is made of your customer, of your employee, of your shareholder, but it's much more than that. So for us, the philosophy has always been to say, hey, let's be strong in delivering results, because without results, you cannot impact.
But I was speaking to your head of North America operations off yesterday, and one thing that actually Amr made a really good point. He was saying, look, if you talk to people in the language they understand, if you don't say, this is a greener initiative, if you say, actually, it's going to cut your costs, then they suddenly get interested. It doesn't matter if it's a red state or a blue state or wherever it is in the world. If you tell them you're going to cut their costs and their energy consumption, then they get interested.
You did it. You did it. You said it. Absolutely. You do it for your planet or you do it for the wallet. You have the choice.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't care about the planet. I get that. They've got shareholders. They don't care about stakeholders. That's their remit. They're CEOs. But you can do this and make a lot of money or save a lot of money as well. Just give us some practical examples in the States as well of how this is working, because it's not just a question of red or blue. It's both.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, consuming energy is complicated because you need more and more energy in the world. You know how much energy you need to have in the data center. The real question is how you make sure that you can monitor your operation, be extremely reliable and save energy at the same time. You can do it in data center. Guess what? You can do it in your home. You have technology more and more which are available, which will be amplified by AI, where you can save 5 to 10% of your energy in your home. So that's what we are doing at Schneider Electric in different
tells me I'm out of soya milk that worries me.
I want to get to your AI story because you were seen as one of the AI stocks in Europe, and your designs to be used in data centers that use NVIDIA's flagship server. That announcement crossing late last year. We've just had a monster announcement from the United States this week about Stargate. And for the audience that hasn't pieced this together, OpenAI is going to be driving AI in the United States. OpenAI orders NVIDIA chips, or uses NVIDIA data centers. You're in these data centers now in the future. So did you just get a massive boost from the Stargate initiative?
Of course, we have a massive boost from the AI initiative in general. There is this hype on AI, but it's becoming real. Because, we are on the two sides of AI. We are supporting the largest company in the world to build their data center, and it has to be more and more effective. They need more and more power, and that's where we come, Schneider Electric, to help them. But at the same time, we are using AI to make our own operation more efficient, to help your home to be more efficient tomorrow. And we clearly see that it's becoming a reality, and we see it because we are using it in our company. It helps to amplify everything we do. So as you said, we help those companies to build those large data centers and to make sure they are, again, more efficient. They are consuming more heat. We have to help them on those technologies as well, and it's very important.
I had a light switch moment this week. Compute. It's a sovereign issue. I mean, we've been discussing what type of architecture countries need to power AI in future. And the US is going for this in a big way. We thought they were already through private-public companies. But really what we've seen with public policy now aligned behind companies, they will have effectively a sovereign AI strategy in place. Do other countries, does Europe need to have one as well?
Look, all the countries are looking at it, of course, and it's important, of course, and we respect what the government want to do. But at the end of the day, we have to understand that every company in the world is becoming more and more global. So government has also to understand that if they want to help their own domestic companies to be successful outside their home country, they need to find some common agreement. So sovereignty is important, but at the same time, every company has to go beyond its own country, and we need to find a common ground to operate. That's what we are challenging government.
Because we've got a German finance minister waiting as well, and this is the question that your comms team has been really excited about as well. Just explain to us why Donald Trump is wrong about green initiatives.
Well, look, I'm not going to say if he's wrong or not. What is important for me is what does it change? We are looking at our customer, and in Davos you meet a lot of your customer. All our customer, and you said it in your introduction, are keeping a very strong focus on energy cost everywhere in the world. So I don't know if it's a good week or a bad week, but we should not overreact on everything.
No one up this mountain can work it out.
Exactly.
Olivier, we've got to leave it there. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully the start of a long relationship between CNBC and yourself. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. Olivier Blum, who is the CEO of Schneider Electric.
Thank you for listening to Squawk Box Europe Express.
For more market-moving news, you can head to cnbc.com.
Or join us again on the show with Steve Sedgwick, Karen Cho, and myself, Arabile Kumete, weekdays on CNBC.